That should have been a wake-up call, because like I remember just laying passed out on the floor and they took a picture of me and like I was knocked out, but my eyes were open.
I found myself like, all of a sudden I just like, I'm not gonna live.
But for some reason, there's grace, like I'm still here.
God truly restored my life quick. It was quick.
Shifted everything from there.
It kind of helped me understand who God is and what that love was like. God seen me, called me, knew that there was a reason and purpose for my life.
I'm 28 years old, got a 6-year-old son. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Chicago area. Parents split up. Was playing soccer a lot. Played in college a little bit. Had a lot of injuries. I had bipolar. Had some PTSD from like childhood stuff, and then just fell into some bad habits. And I got into like a lot of addictions. I was drinking a lot, smoking a lot. I would do Molly, Coke, all that. I think what took me to the addiction was just escaping reality. I guess I just didn't want to deal with like the issues, you know, because I was always on different medications, different things. And so like when I got off of that and I was like, oh, I don't need this, it was just like, oh, well, I've already been drinking. I've already been doing all these different like parties and stuff. So I'll just use that as like my escape, my own self-medication, I guess, if you will. And it just got into an issue. You know, you lie to yourself, you say, I don't drink a lot, I only drink a couple times a month, but those couple times you black out every time. I don't smoke a lot, but I smoke a little bit every day. And so it's just those lies that you tell yourself to like tell you that you're not doing it a lot, but you know, it takes over. And so then it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, so I'll smoke. But it got so bad to the point where it's like I'm counting the minutes just to end the day so that I can start it over and do it again. So yeah, it was just like, I think that was like around the point where I was like, I need to do something about it. Nobody really knew what was going on. Yeah, and it's just like you hide a lot of the depression from it, you hide a lot of the symptoms from it. And it's really easy to just play along and, you know, kind of just like have a different life, because it's like, you're just trying to hide it, but then you don't know who you are. And so that's the issue that I fell into. I think the lowest moment was probably just, I guess just looking at myself in the mirror every day. I mean, there was times like I would get high and I would tell my mom to pick me up because like I was too scared to sleep at my house. And then like she would pick me up and I'd sleep at her house because like she had the same house, so I'd just sleep in my old bed. And like it wasn't like a one-time thing, like I had done that multiple times, you know? Because it was just like I got too high, you know? And it was like around that point where I was like, I can't keep doing this, but then it was also, you know, I'm spending all my money on weed, and then the weekend comes and spending it all on beer. And then it's like, you know, oh, there's a rave. Okay, cool, I'm spending it all on Molly. You know, you never make any good decisions with that, you know. I used to tell myself like, oh, I don't do Coke, but because I never bought Coke, but every time my friends who had it did it, I would do it, you know. That should have been a wake-up call, because like I remember just laying passed out on the floor and they took a picture of me and like I was knocked out, but my eyes were open. And they put water, I remember they put water on me to wake me up. So they put me in the tub, but the water just kind of like, the cold water like shook me up like, you know, you just wake up. And I remember kind of just like seeing myself from above, and then it was like back to just darkness again. But then when I woke up that morning, I was running as I woke up. So like my eyes weren't up yet, and it was like I was just thirsty. So like I just remember I woke up, my eyes woke up, and I was already running just to the sink, just to grab water. With that, like I found like a reason why, like, cause like I could have died from those like multiple times, but for some reason there's grace, like I'm still here, you know? And so yeah, I think that's like kind of like what drove the addiction, was like, oh, I've been in these places where it seemed like I could have been dead and I had more than what I'm doing daily, so, oh, I'll be fine with this, you know? I split up with my son's mom about a year before I decided to like flip the switch to turn things around. I was deep in the addiction, and yeah, I was just like, I need to do something. The only thing really keeping me going was just like Louis, knowing that if I wasn't there, that it would be worse for him than like for me not to be there. Yeah, so it just started, I don't know what it was, like around that time, like everything was switching in terms of like what I was looking at, not by me like looking for it, but things were just coming to me. I found like a marathon plan. It was like a 6-week from 0 to marathon. So yeah, so I did that, and I decided like I'm not gonna smoke, I'm not gonna drink, I'm not gonna do any drugs, and I'm gonna eat clean while I do it. So I went from, that first one was like 2.5 miles in 40 minutes. And then the marathon was, there was no marathon to sign up for, so I just ran 13.1 and then came back. I did that one in 4:30, and then 7 weeks later was another marathon. So that was an official one, so I signed up for that. I beat that time by like 30 minutes or so. I think I got 3:53. And during that time, I learned a lot about myself. I learned I wanted to stay sober. I didn't have a relationship with God. And so I was giving myself a lot of credit, you know. It was like, look at me, look what I'm doing. And I felt like I needed to be humbled at that point. And I was still feeling like a void of like, cool, I've done all these things, like, now what? Like, I felt great about myself, but I felt empty. And then, I started building a relationship with God, and then I started coming to People Church. And yeah, it just kind of shifted everything from there. I started doing some weight training. I learned about what Ironman is. My dad gave me a bike, so I started riding my bike. And then in January of this year, I started teaching myself how to swim. And yeah, just pretty much like learning how to train myself, how to get all that. And then did some smaller races this year, and then just did Ironman, the half Ironman, which was a 70.3. And I did that a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I look back and it's, it was just the marathon that really switched everything. That's where the sobriety came. That's where just learning about myself, where like I learned how to shift, how to be not just physically present, but emotionally present for Louis. And yeah, here I am like 18 months later after that, I want to say it was probably like a couple months after going where I was like, I think like I'm ready to make like this declaration. And like the meaning was just like, I want to learn how to fully surrender. Like, I think I'm ready to do that. Because everything was going great. Like, my faith was growing. It was so interesting because things got so much harder after that. Like, it was like everything was like hitting a peak. I got baptized, and then it was like, oh, you want this? You're making a public declaration. Like, let's see how it goes, because now my faith has really been tested through that. Yeah, it was weird. Not like weird in like the literal sense, but it was cool because I talked to my group leader, Blake, so he's been really helpful through all that, and it taught me a lot about just like staying in the pocket, where you're still doing your prayers, you're still reading your Bible, you're still learning. And it's similar to working out, where it's like you don't see progress every day, but like you have to continue it to have the consistency, and it compounds. And that's like where like I could have either fell off faith, or I could have been like, dug deeper into it. I think I dug deeper into it. I got more involved with community at church. I got more involved with my own relationship with God. And I think that's like what it was meant to do, I guess, at least for me. And Blake was saying, like, a lot of people don't talk about, the post baptism, where that's like when your faith will really be tested for most people. Because it's easy to have faith when everything's good, especially like for like new believers, when everything's, it's rainbows. It's, oh, cool, like this is making sense. This is making sense. Okay, cool. I can relate this to me. Like, oh, this is what, like, they're talking about, this is how, like, you build a relationship with God. I've been doing that, and it seems like I have this spiritual relationship. It seems like God's moving through me. Like, I'm ready to take these next steps. And it's like, that's where the question is, are you really? And I think that question comes up after you get baptized. At least for me, it came up after I got baptized. And yeah, I mean, my faith has grown more. I've learned more about the Bible since then. I've learned what it means to actually build a relationship with God, how to teach it with Louis. And just kind of how to preach with my actions rather than preach like, going out and just saying like, oh, do this, do this. It's like your actions kind of show through, what it's like to be a Christ-led man. And so, yeah, I think that's like been a huge thing since the baptism. Is just like the importance of that pocket, it's just staying in it, and like that's like where the faith really grows. Best part about being Louis' dad is he's very active, and he's very similar to me, I guess. He always wants to run. He likes biking now. He plays soccer. And he just always wants to be active. He doesn't want to like just be on the phone. I mean, obviously he wants to be on the phone, but like if he has an option to be on the phone or be outside, like he's gonna go be outside. Sometimes he'll get me up and like we'll go, like, let's go to the park. And he used to always wake me up like, the sun is up, it's time to wake up. That was his thing, because I would always be sleeping in at that point. But yeah, he'd be like, the sun is up, it's time to wake up, and he'd do that. So that was always like a great memory with him. I just love that he's always active. He's always wanting to do things, even in the house, like he's running up a storm. So it's cool, it keeps me active. He's competitive, so it's cool, it's awesome. It's like a little mini me.
I'm one of 8. My parents had 8 children, 6 girls and 2 boys. As a child, I did see many things as far as drug users in my household, drug dealers in my household, actually drugs in my backyard, tables full of it, looking out the window and wondering, what is this? What's going on here? But I never asked anybody. I, as a child, just internally kept that, and had that vision always. Never really even expressed it to my children. Honestly, this might be the first time that they're hearing it, but there is another side, but that was part of it. There was a point when I was a child, though, that I had an aunt that wanted to introduce me to God. I didn't know that was gonna happen, but at that moment, my parents weren't believers, so I used to hide to go to church. And if I remember anything, I remember hiding to go to church when I was young, 11, 12 years old. And even though I was hiding, there's a point that God's house, there's something there. There's a light there, there's impartation there, and obviously there's instruction as far as how to live. And that was always drawn to that, even as a teenager, and even though I made a lot of mistakes, but mostly I knew there was a light there. So as I was drawn to church and drawn there is for that, I found God and I accepted Jesus in my heart. And the church back then was great, pastors were great, but I found myself in a situation that I got pregnant. And when that happened, the person that I was with at that time just kind of isolated me. Did not see my mom, did not see my dad, because at that point we did get married. And it was really without the blessing of my dad. My dad was out of town, and my mom's actually the one that signed for me. But when I got pregnant, when that happened, I was isolated, did not see my family. And this was like really within a year, believe it or not. It all happened in 1 year. I was abused behind closed doors, in front of his family. Things were really bad. I never went to a hospital, but I just had to heal in a room with bruises, with all kinds of stuff happening to me. I was hiding that abuse, and I didn't know how to tell anybody. And there came a point where there was a pastor who's like, hey, what's going on? And at that point, I still didn't say anything. I still hid it. I was shamed. I didn't know what's going to happen in my life. So there was a point where we were in our room, and it was not a good situation, and I was getting abused behind a door, and I found myself like, all of a sudden, I'm not gonna live. Like, I think I'm gonna die right now, So I don't know how I had the strength, but on the other side of the door was some family trying to get in through the door, but it didn't happen. And somehow I got away and ran. I was barefoot, running through a town, in the suburbs. And I made it to a bowling alley. I remember making it to a bowling alley and called my best friend. At that time, you had the change in your pocket and you put it in the phone. There was no cell phones. And she came and got me. This was a girl that I grew up right across the street, knew her number, and she came and got me and took me home. I was pregnant at that time, and within a day or two, I did lose a baby. So that was a whole experience in a hospital. But my mom and my sisters came to my side, and within that year, God restored my life. And I know, there's women and girls that are going through this, and God truly restored my life quick. It was quick. Because again, when I was that 12-year-old girl, God seen me, called me, knew that there was a reason and purpose for my life, and that there was life for me and not death. With that being said, trauma was there. I was restored. God healed me. That was a big time in my life. God brought restoration then with the love of my life, which is now my husband. And we have 3 beautiful children, 3 beautiful grandbabies. And our family's growing. And my daughter's now pregnant, my eldest. And the love of my life truly is a pillar. He leads my family. We may not agree on a lot of things, but ultimately we come together to agree, right? And our kids, we've always strived to be parents that would create unity in the home, love in the home, God in the home. From that experience, I know it made us stronger. It made our marriage stronger. And, ultimately, I'm here to testify in the sense that, again, women, girls that are in that type of situation, You have to find a community. You have to find people that are feeding into you, that are good things to truly pull you out. And I did have that in my family. Bringing my children closer to God was always my goal, regardless of what challenges came up. So as a mom and as a grandma, that is really important to me and also to my husband, that, we show them God's love, and that community in church. And that's why I truly love People Church, because that's what it's all about. In the beginning of People Church, I know we're not going there, but AKA, I was always Fallon's mom. No one ever knew me as Rosie, Are you Fallon's mom? Yeah, I'm Fallon's mom. Oh, that's okay, But Fallon actually drew me to People Church, and that was a really big piece of my life right now, truly. But getting back to the love of my life, he supports my kids. We've done that together, and always found that, however we could do it, to get them into church and around people so they could ultimately be great people themselves and adults. So the shifting for me at People Church, and yes, Pastor Chris gave me a word that I don't think it's a coincidence, right? My husband was there, my son was there, my eldest daughter, Felicia, was there, and Fallon was on stage. And Pastor said some things to me directly that had to do with my childhood and young teenhood and young adulthood that I had not shared with anybody, and I know God showed him that and spoke to my life that this is what's going on. This is what happened, in your childhood or your adulthood, as a young adult. And the one thing he said, though, was like a lot of encouragement. And through that word, I kind of was listening to it over and over, and thank God somebody did record it at one point. And as I was listening to it over and over, it just started to plant seed in my heart. So a seed in a garden, oh my gosh. So I have a passion for gardening. And through educating myself, because it's, when you want to learn something, you're going to read a book or two, right? Or learn how it all works. And one thing that I have strived to do is keep my heart clean. Keep my soil clean. And what does that mean? So the scripture that it says, if a seed falls on rocky ground, what type of soil that it's falling on, and thorns, and how the weeds, it'll choke it out, and things like that. So that scripture has been dear to me, but not only as a gardener, but as a believer, somebody fulfilling their life in Christ, right? So if you don't have good soil, if you don't have a good heart, in a sense, that soil, keeping it clean, how is it going to grow and flourish, right? So I always took that analogy and I use it as a parent. Where are you at? If I seen them a little off, what is going on? Where's your heart posture? What's happening with your heart? But I also would speak to myself too. Where's my heart posture at that time in serving? Why are you being so drawn back from People Church? What's happening? Get in there. Where's your heart posture? So when I actually opened that up and realized that these seeds that were planted in my heart, these words that are spoken in my life, I truly was looking for them to flourish, right? And once I knew that I was surrounded a safe place, and that's where People Church is for me. It's a true safe place. From trauma to hope, I knew deep down inside that God spoke a word in me. So that's what brought me over, because I knew I was called.
My name is Dr. Bianca Martinez. I'm currently a pediatric critical care fellow in training in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And a little bit about myself, grew up loving basketball. That was like my first dream career, and then kind of did a pivot in middle school once I realized I wasn't gonna be like 6'4" like Lisa Leslie. But always had kind of a natural inclination towards health and wellness and just learning a lot more about the body. I just thought I always had a fascination towards like how God created us and just the ways that it works on a daily basis without us having to really think about it. And that kind of brought me into my career into medicine many years later. So now I'm here. As a doctor, like I have to go into work prayed up, knowing that I could face some of the most tragic things that I've ever seen on a daily basis. And that's something where even in the moment, there are times where I'm like, man, God, like, can I do this procedure that I've never done before? And I'm looking over to the parents crying on the side, or the patient who's just not well and not fully there. And it's a moment where I feel almost like I'm in a different type of mentality. I'm in a different zone where it's like, I have to show up. I have to be all that I am called to be in this moment, because it's sometimes life or death, honestly. That's the biggest thing that I would say, like on a daily basis. I can't just breeze by my prayer time or like my word time in the mornings, because again, like I never know what battle I'm showing up to when I get to work. I never know what the families are carrying, what anxiety or fear they're carrying as I walk in to see them and to speak with them or see their kids. And even in those moments, I think I've seen a lot of just really sad situations, accidents, and chronic illness that's nearing the end of life. And the biggest thing that I've been taught is like, it's not so much what we say from a medical perspective. Yeah, I think the reality is I would love to say that I don't ever bring it home with me, but again, like I am human. I have a heart that I think I'm especially sensitive towards people's pain and towards people's suffering. And I remember one instance, my first week of fellowship, I had about a 11-year-old little boy who had an accident and suffered an anoxic brain injury. And every day he was just progressing worse and worse and worse, till finally one day the parents decided, this has been enough. We would like to just withdraw care. So standing in that room, that was my first time actually seeing like a little boy who was fully supported on a ventilator and still had a heart rate, go from that to death, right? Seeing the color change in the face, seeing the families grieving on the side. That was something that in the moment, I'm a human, right? So I started crying. I tried to just be still and let the family have their time. But yeah, in that moment, I was feeling real grief and real sorrow. And I walked out of the room, and my attending at the time, he looks to me and he says, "Welcome to the PICU. We got paperwork to do." And that really hurt me, because I was like this family just lost their little boy to an injury that, should have never happened. And for someone to be that far along in their career, and I'm sure he's seen so many people pass away, but for him to have a heart that's that hardened towards the real suffering of people, I told myself I never want to get to that point. And so that day, I went home and I just took a shower, and I was like, God, like, why? Why did this have to happen? Like, why is this something that happens like probably daily, right? Like there's suffering and there's death, there's innocent lives that are taken daily. And I was just reminded of, the fact that we live in a fallen world, and that on this side of eternity, like, just stuff is going to happen that is terrible, right? Jesus told us, like, in this world there will be trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And I really sat there and I was crying out to God. Like I didn't even have the strength to reach out to one of my friends, because that's something that it's hard to do that in the moment. But like God was with me. He pointed me to the verse in 2 Corinthians, where it talks about God being the God of all comfort, and how he comforts us so that we can go and comfort others. And that was a moment where I realized, during this next phase of my career, I have to be really, really reminded and my heart has to be saturated with the word, because I'm gonna face people who don't have God, who don't know Jesus, who don't have an understanding of God's sovereignty, right? And so I have to remind myself of that, so that I can come in with that heart of like, you know what, I have been comforted. I'm definitely not going through what they're going through in that moment, but I have been comforted in my times of need and my times of suffering, and because of God, and I can go in and bring that and at least try to extend that to them in those moments. And there's nothing that I'll ever be able to say that's gonna make their pain go away. And then at that point, I kind of shift my perspective to thinking about the family and praying for the family. And I do also, I guess, starting off in the day, knowing I have 2 or 3 sick kids on my list of 10, I'll go through and I'll just start praying for them. When I see them in the mornings and I'm like examining them, I'm like, okay, God, you know what's going on. We may not know what's going on here, but God, please help us help this family, help us help this child, and whatever it may be, like that they may be needing. I guess, how do I stay hope-filled throughout that is both with like my personal communion with God on the daily. Like I said, when I'm doing these procedures, when I'm stepping up and having to give family bad news, I'm praying like, God, be with me, be with us, be in this room, because that's all I have in the moment, and thankfully I've had, over a 10-year walk with God where I've been through highs and lows, and I've seen him show up faithful, even if it's not the right result or the result that I think that, should happen. He's still shown up faithful. And also on a practical level, at the end of these hard weeks, I have an amazing community and family that really check in on me and that are constantly just reaching out, praying for me. And I know that goes like way beyond what I can even see. I started coming to People Church back in 2021 when I moved to Chicago for my pediatrics residency. For me, a huge priority when I moved to Chicago was to find a church community and a church family. And so I pretty much showed up. I think we were at Zobe Art Center in Pilsen, and we're still in pandemic restrictions, but ever since that first Sunday, I've never left. I've always showed up back to church. Some days I'll have to miss because I have work or whatever, but as far as like the community I've found, it's like one connection led to another, and now I feel like I have a family here in Chicago. And being from Texas, that sounds crazy to say, but the people here at People Church have really become my chosen family, or God's family for me. And then through that, I also was encouraged to join a serve team. And I was like, you know what, I've always loved kids. I've always, had a way with children. And so I decided to join the kids team, and particularly the littles team, which I've always loved babies as well. And so through that, I've met so many amazing families, and these kids are like, I feel like they are my nieces and nephews. Like truly, I love just getting to see them grow and getting to just know their families, and a lot of their families have opened up their homes to me for dinners and just for having like sweet family moments that I don't necessarily get to have with my own family. And so that has been something that's really special, and like I could never put a price tag on that. To those who are in the middle of a battle, of the worst season of their life, I would say just show up. Show up to anything that, if you're invited to a grow group, a coffee hang, anything, show up broken, show up defeated, because you never know what's on the other side of that connection, right? And sometimes we all carry things that we sometimes never talk about with those who love us. But I would say, like the Bible says, encourage one another daily as long as it is called today. That's in Hebrews 3. And that's something that like we as a body should also come into alignment, not knowing what our neighbor is carrying. The Bible talks about setting your mind on the things above and not on the things below. Talks about renewing our mind daily. And there's so many things that the Word of God says that if we actually like put that into practice, it will literally change your life.
So
So growing up in the church, we were always involved in a lot of different types of ministries. We were together through youth ministry, kids ministry, media, worship, and we kind of just grew up together, not only within our lives, as friends, but kind of growing up in our relationship with God as well and trying to navigate that together. One of the pivotal points in our lives that kind of shifted everything was the time of the pandemic. So at that time, we were kind of isolated and secluded from family because we weren't able to meet anymore in-house. And so we had to navigate kind of what church at home looked like. And on top of that, we had our twin boys at the time as well. So it was a lot of different dynamics changing at once and a little bit overwhelming for us as well as we tried to merge and balance what family looked like as well as what family at church looked like and trying to merge the two together. And that was something that I found very difficult for myself to navigate and get through. And it ultimately kind of helped me, in a sense, make an excuse of like, now is not the time to kind of do church or take a break from ministry, as I've been doing this for so many years and I've been dedicating like my entire life to this. Now is the time where I can kind of just focus on my family, but I was missing the important part of keeping Christ at the center of it through that. So it was just a lot of change that kind of took us by surprise very quickly. And it built that callousness within my heart, and it kind of built that resentment for myself in my relationship with God of like, why aren't things working out the way that they should be? Like, we've been doing everything right. Why does it feel like everything is so wrong at the moment? Throughout that time, and right around when the boys turned 2 years old, we started to have a conversation like, wow, time really flew by. And I feel as though we've been out of the church for like 10 plus years, and where's my relationship at? Like, it kind of gave myself a heart check and within ourselves too, and within our own relationship of like, hey, we've kind of lost sight of God being at the center of this. Like, we need to realign, we need to build that importance again and that priority within our lives and as individuals and as a couple to really put God first. And that week that we kind of had that conversation almost every single day about how can we get connected, whether it's through our family church again or looking to see other options for another church that we can connect with. That was something that we continued to battle and struggle with, especially myself. That was something that I struggled with big time, was just to let go of that fear, because I was very fearful about what that would entail, or would that bring a divide between my father and I, because I valued my relationship with him so much, and I've learned so much of what it means to be a man of God through him, and the values that he instilled within me and my sister and our family were something that I didn't want to seem as though it was lost if I was just to get disconnected from our family church and seek somewhere else. So at that moment, my father, throughout that fasting, shared around like 5 or 6 in the morning, he sends a text to me saying how God gave him a word, and it was that we needed to prioritize our faith and our family with God being at the center. And he said, even if that meant leaving our church, even if that meant leaving the family home, he gave us that blessing of being released to seek out another area where we can be connected with God and still serve under his kingdom.
Literally received that text message. We're like, okay, God, like if this is what you want for us, like we're gonna just walk in faith and do it. And so we did it. And
so that at that moment when I read that, it just lifted up a burden off of me. And it opened up that conversation of me being able to talk to my dad about what does that look like.
I was wrestling back and forth because I felt it, that we needed to like probably look somewhere else to go to church. I even wrote Marlene on Instagram because I was following her randomly. And I'm like, hey, I know you go to People Church, like what's like the kids ministry like? That was like my main thing. I was just like, what's the kids ministry like? Do you guys have anything for kids? Because I think we would just miss like sitting in service and just receiving, because we weren't able to do that like with the kids when they were young. We would just always sit in the back in the nursery because we had 2. So I was like, I'm not carrying both of these kids by myself and dealing with them.
Us walking through the doors of People Church, we walked in with our boys into service, and we were, I felt as though we were like little puppies, like lost in a sense, because we just felt so confused and what to do and where to go, and like
we sat in the back, and yeah, I brought their lunch, And I was like, okay, this might be a mistake, but it's okay. Brought their lunch, sat them down, ate their lunch. And then we ran into Lauren and she's like, oh, are those twins? And we're like, yeah. She's like, I have twins. And we're like, okay, this is good. We're starting off good. There, we can connect with people, twin parents. So we're like, this is fun. And then it was just stressful. I think that service was just stressful for us because they were like, just all over the place. I gave him a lollipop and I was like, I don't know why I gave him a lollipop. So they were just like climbing over the chairs and we're like, yeah, I think it's time to go. Well, you said that.
Yeah, I was kind of seeing the stress involved in it and we're like, okay, this is not what we want. This is adding more pressure, but at the same time, it felt as though it was like coincidentally, right? Like the worst day that we could possibly have of running late and being around the church. Advice that I would give to people who are also experiencing that track or kind of in that moment of confusion and feeling stuck is that just go through the process. And I think that was the biggest part, was actually making that one step and taking things step by step in order for us to gain more comfortable feelings within ourselves and within our family, and to address things and bring things in slowly to our family.
Yeah, and I think even him like serving first, like when we first, like he went right in. I was like, I think you should take your time. Like, let's just sit back and nobody knows who we are. This is awesome. Let's just sit down and let's just receive, because we were in a season where we felt like lost and just like confused and what was next for us. We weren't sure. And so I was like, you can go ahead and you serve if you want. But I took a step back and I'm like, I feel like I just need to just sit in the presence of the Lord or just be there. And so, yeah, it's like, once we hit retreat, we got into retreat, we got invited. And I was like, I don't even feel like I should be there. I'm not even serving, like, you can go. And I was telling Lauren and Jake, and I was like, hey, Justin's gonna go by himself. I'm gonna sit back. And they're like, no, you need to go. I'm like, but I'm not serving, like, I'm okay. And so then we were able to experience that. And I think that's when my heart was like literally chipping away. And I was like, okay, Lord, like, I'm feeling like I can heal here. And I think that's where I was like, okay, this is like home, because I felt like the healing and yeah, just taking place.
Stepping into a new place, into new culture, into new friends, new community, helped me gauge what that relationship looked like and challenged me to increase in certain areas that I saw that was lacking, so that way I can continue to tap into my calling and what God wants us to do, not only for me, but within our family and together as a couple.
My name is Tiffany Williams Jenkins. Jenkins is pretty new, so I'm still trying to acclimate. From the south side of Chicago, born and raised, and Chi-City, my city.
My name is Vanzel Jenkins. I'm born and raised south side Chicago. I was blessed enough with my mother keeping, God in me, in our family, through all the different little things that we've had to go through in life, and being able to continue that through, that period in my time in my history where I was homeless. So where it was staying on the street sometimes, or sometimes it'd be at the beach saying we're going to see the sunrise, but I knew because, we didn't have a place to go. But even through all of that, I had a blessing that my mom was able to keep us fixed on God. And even if we stumble out the way, we know we got to get back to it and get back in it.
Yeah, we didn't really grow up in the church. I didn't start going to church until I was about 12 years old. And it's a funny story. We went to church because Grandpa was buying McDonald's after. So I was like, ooh, if we go to church, we get McDonald's after. So that was like the start of going to church. My great grandfather and my grandmother would take us, and just thinking about them. We grew up with a lot of good foundation in our home. Like, we just grew up as good people. Like, that was non-negotiable. You're good people. We take care of others. We're fair to others. But I didn't know God until like about 15. And the beautiful thing about that is, before my grandmother passed, I didn't even remember I didn't realize she remembered she said that to me, but I held it for so long. And she said to me before she passed away that, I'm so happy you did what you said you were gonna do. But she was a good foundation for me. Yeah. Out and experience the world a little bit, and yeah, I was going out. I like to go out dancing. I had a really good friend. We just go out dancing, and yeah, so it was a moment where it was like that's when Step Up was like the movie, and it was like happening in front of me. I'm like, this is so cool, and yeah, Vance was there. He said I was looking at him. I don't remember that, but he said he locked eyes and he knew I was the one. No, he didn't. No, we were friends for quite some time, and he saw me dating other people, and finally, he was, was like, well, I'm gonna date somebody, so we can't be around each other anymore because you get too close, and I gotta respect him. And he's just like, I'm tired of you dating other people and, ending up falling short and people not seeing you for who you are and treating you right. So I was like, oh, so you wanna get serious about something in life? And he kind of froze at that moment, like deer in the headlights. And I didn't realize what that meant until after we got married. He was like, no, at that point, I realized no, I'm not dating you. I'm dating you with intention to marry you. So it's pretty cool.
Being around God, being around this as I'm growing, I'm saying I'm not going to date just to date. I don't want to date just to be out here having fun. I want to date with intentionality, because even though it wasn't clear on what was called in my life, I knew it was something big and I had to keep growing in that. So and looking back at it, we were friends, and then we introduced her. I came to People Church first. I introduced her to People Church when she was, looking in her growth. And I was like, I go to this church to see how this fits and see if this can work with you and your perspective. And she kind of jumped right in and kind of locked arms with everybody. And then she was gone. She's like, you better keep up with me now.
Yeah, I was like, this is your church? You are totally missing it. You're not taking advantage of it? You haven't gone a growth track? What do you mean you haven't done these things? Look at these people. Look at these people serving God. It was just so beautiful. And I'm like, you've been here for how long? You're missing it. I don't yeah, every day is an outer body experience, to answer that. Every day. My son and I'm gonna say he helped me because he said he came up with the saying, and I'm like, no, I think I did, but he said if you put it on the shirt first, it's his. So I'm blessed to get to do the things that I do, right? But it happens and then it's gone, and then it's okay, that was dope. What's next? That's dope. What's next? And I feel just growing, just even growing in God, it's that's dope. What's next? So that's kind of how I feel my life is. So it's always this out-of-body experience. People are amazed at the things, and I'm just yeah, that was cool. Yeah, that happened. I'm not doing it anymore. It's something else coming. So I'm just ready to move to the next thing, and not to just move past it, but it's God's got more. So I'm okay with that. Yeah.
And seeing us in that growth, and as I learned that, even more about who she is, and even her growth with God and her growth in this process, we were starting to date. We was growing together, and I like that. Looking back, we've gone to 2 retreats.
Yeah.
The first it was going to church together. And then we started dating, because we came to church first, and then we started dating. Mm-hmm. And then we went to retreat together.
Yeah.
By the time we were still dating, and, you can't stay in the same room. So we stayed in the different dorms. But then by the following year, we were able to stay in the same because we were married by then.
Going into 2024 was just this moment of expectant. Even 2024 started as the word expectant. God, this year I'm just expecting you. I'm just expecting you to do your word, all the things that you promised. And it really turned into God saying to me, no, I'm actually expecting you to do the things I asked you to do. It was almost a what next moment. Okay, God, what next? I know what that means. We talked about it so intensely in the car about what that meant for me at that moment, what that meant for life for me at that moment. The immediate changes that I needed to happen to be in that space. And I think it may have been 2 weeks after. We were talking about, I don't know what I'm doing next. I don't know what this means. And I think they announced People College. And we weren't sitting together. We were on the opposite side because we came in different times. And when it was announced, I immediately felt like something fell from the sky and the earth shook. And I'm looking around like nobody else felt that. What is that? And I'm like, okay, God, that's what I'm supposed to do next. That's the next step. And we came out to the foyer after, and he saw me and I saw him. And I said, I think I'm supposed to do people college. He's like, yeah, when I saw it, I knew you were going to tell me that. So, that was the inspiration, I guess. Yeah.
So even though this year we were able to get married, well, last year technically, we're within 12 months.
Yeah, we're still.
It was November.
It's next month. Yeah, next month.
It was last November. We were able to get married, and then we had a little, small ceremony, and my mom was there. My whole family was there, and we had an amazing time together. People from our lives, a lot of people from People Church. But then back in May is when I lost my mother. In a matter of a week, it went from making jokes to her in the hospital to her not breathing anymore. And even through that, one thing my mother still poured into us is still keep God. So it became, for every bad thing that happens, doesn't give an opportunity for something great. It doesn't give an opportunity for something good, but an opportunity for something great. You just have to find out what it is. And I said that time and time again, and then it grew from, for everything bad that happens, doesn't give an opportunity for something good, but an opportunity for something great to happen. Listen to God, how he wants to use it. So all of my siblings and I, we all focused on how does God want to use this? And be an example of how not to fall apart, how not to get at each other's throats. How do we praise God after we actually would meet in a hotel, in the hospital, and pray together? And we went into a whole other room and had a whole worship session, and it's how do I use that? And if there's anything that I know God will use it, and it puts me through things and puts us through things so that we can be the people to reach the people in those situations. He's always with those who's grieving. And I don't expect it to get better. I expect him to use it better. I mentioned my mother kept me in church and always kept me around it. And I'm appreciative of People Church and being able to be connected. And my time being here, it was a lot of how do I grow? How do I connect with people? How do I find my place and be a part of it? And as I grew here, and she asked me, like, how was I here so long? It was because I was still working out how to connect with people. And I guess God had me grow when I was able to accept him in the little yeses. When I started listening to him more, I was able to connect more.
Just being in a space where people showed a different love, it kind of helped me understand who God is and what that love was like.